Oh, here we go.
I've heard you.
Okay, there's Susie, okay? She's been hearing me for 31 years, for crying out loud. The last 19 of which has been the most loveliest time in my life, in my relationship with her. Like I said, she looked me up in poker rooms. We were friends. So the third time one of her boyfriends went to jail, we were out having drinks at the Union Plaza Casino, listening to music. And I just said, to hell with all this. I am going to make a move. And I did. And so I did. And so anyways, I'm not going to go any further into this story, Susie, except for the fact of how we met again. The last time I saw Susie was probably Christmas of 1990. Never saw her again in my life. As you guys know, if you know from my story, I ended up in the hospital in Las Vegas after a 7-year heroin addiction, and came back home to the Bay Area here and got clean. And so went to school, got my KDAC counseling license to be able to go work in a program, which I did. So in 2001, I think it was like 2 weeks, maybe a week or two after 9/11, I was at a conference, and it was really weird because it was a KDAC conference, and we had a booth. The program I work with has a booth. I'm not going to mention their name, but so it was Thursday, Friday, and Saturday was this conference. And so myself and this gal named Regina were going on Thursday. My program director and another counselor was going on Friday, and then assistant program director was going on Saturday. So as fate has it, I'm here at this meeting, and it's just like a KDAC, vote, raise your hand and vote for this bill meeting, which is boring as hell to me. So I told my friend, I said, I think I'm just gonna walk. I was looking at these brochures. I had these brochures and all these different workshops that afternoon, right? So I'm reading, and I see this one thing here. It says, Susan Foreman, Prostitution Outreach, Vallejo. That looks good, Susan. I think I'm making me a drink of water, too. I don't know why I'm nervous. I don't know. Anyways, because maybe she's sitting here listening to me tell the story. So anyways, I tell Regina, I says, I knew a Susie Foreman or Susan Foreman. Susie Foreman, I said, it said Susan Foreman on the brochure. I said, I used to know a Susie Foreman back in Las Vegas, right? So I leave the ballroom. I walk through the lobby. As I'm walking through the lobby, the door opens, and it's Susie. Me and Susie standing there looking at each other with, this was better than when Harry met Sally, for crying out loud. So Greg met Susie, okay? And so she said, I remember saying to me distinctly, she says, I didn't know whether to slap the shit out of you or kiss you and give you a big hug, right? She says, I have done so much effing work on you in my recovery. So as it had it, from that point there, me and her left the conference, walked across the street to Denny's, had a cup of coffee, and we just caught up on a lot of stuff. And so I think I'm going to take it from there. That day, actually, that I met her, saw her again in that Holiday Inn in Emeryville, California. We were talking about lunch at the time, but she was going out to lunch. She had a couple of girls taking her out to lunch. Was it 7 or 8 years, Susie? Was it 7 or 8 years you were celebrating in 2001?
8.
8 years. Yeah. So she was going out to lunch with some of her friends to celebrate, her 8 years clean and sober. And so after that, we exchanged numbers, and, the rest is history. She's my dear friend. I love her to death. Please listen to her share. She's sponsored all kinds of gals. She's a sponsee, and she's a sponsor, and she just has a wonderful story. So I'm going to turn it over to Susie. Susie, it's all yours.
All right, Greg. Thank you. Thank you, David, for having me also. I really appreciate it. I love to talk about recovery because it's a big part of my life, and it has gotten me through so much. Life, shows up too when you get clean and sober. It doesn't mean that you're going to have good days all the time, because I've gone through a lot of struggles. I'll be coming up on 27 years clean in September, and I'm truly grateful for every year, because I struggled a lot during those 27 years, but I didn't pick up and use to help with that, because I can do that. I can shut my feelings off real easy. And I know how to do that really well, and I don't have to do that today. I can work through my problems and able to reach out to other women in my support group today to help me with that. I never thought that, there'd be a day that I would become an addict. I was raised by a very good family. My dad was a hard worker. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. My dad was a sheet metal worker in San Francisco. My parents owned 2 bars and a hotel. And everything really looked good on the outside, right? Nice, wealthy family, brand new home built. I go to Catholic school. But what ended up happening was that, there was a lot of drinking going on and a lot of fighting with my mom and dad. And I pretty much, eventually my mom and dad divorced, and my dad got custody, and we moved from Fairfield to Vallejo because he had a home for his mom that he bought. And we went to go live with her because she was getting old. And so my dad got custody, and I pretty much got to do whatever I wanted at a very young age. And I had the whole downstairs to myself. I eventually started using and drinking at the age of 12. I remember going to Catholic school in the morning, and before I'd go, I'd drink some Strawberry Hill wine. And, and that's how it all started, and then I started, smoking weed before school and everything else. And so during that time, I always hung out with people that were always older than me, 5 years older than me. And I hung out with a couple of the guys down the street who were, 5 years older than me, and they were doing drugs, and I started experimenting. And then I fell in love with our paper boy who came back from the Army, and he's my son's father. And we wanted to get married, and we did. And I got married at 16. My dad let me, he went with me, him and my sister. My mom did not want me to get married. She told me I was going to school the next day, because after they divorced, my mom and dad did get back together. So then I ended up getting married, and I married a man who was a heroin addict. I hadn't experimented with heroin. Well, I did experiment with it before I got married, yes. And but I just really kind of didn't like it. And I just choose to do a lot of reds. If anybody's, my age, what reds are, and yellows and all the downers. And so I was doing a lot of pills and drinking a lot and just doing what I wanted to do. My family basically did not really care if I got married at 16. I went and left. So I pretty much left, and we moved to Fresno, and we lived there. And then things did get, crazy and worse. So we moved back to Vallejo, where my dad put us in an apartment. And, we were both on welfare. And so then I ended up getting pregnant at 18, and I had a beautiful little boy, and I was so happy. And but the marriage didn't last. It was back and forth, off and on, off and on, off and on. We were doing a lot of drugs and drinking, and my son, I had him, and so eventually, we kind of went our own separate ways. And what it ended up happening is that, my dad pretty much took care of me and my mom, and then my dad passed away, and then my mom was doing everything she possibly could. And so finally it got to where, I couldn't hold a job anymore. I was probably probably 24. Scotty was probably about 6. I was probably 23, 24. Scotty's about 6. And in that meantime, I had got in a relationship with a man that was a heroin addict then, and I got strung out. I got hooked. I got hooked on heroin, and it was an awful thing. And I couldn't believe it that I was, because I had told myself early on that, I'd hung around a lot of people that, were heroin addicts and shot a lot of dope. And my thing was that's one thing I'll never do, is stick a needle in my arm, And it eventually happened, right? So what ended up going on was, while I was with this man, we were dealing a lot of dope and out of his house, and we were mostly selling to all the prostitutes. In the morning, they'd come and want to get fixed before they go to work. And I told myself, God, I could never go out and do that, sell my body, So anyways, what ended up happening, we got pretty strung out. We were pretty sick. And, the cops were pretty much on to what was going on and all the drug dealing we were doing. And I had my son with me this time, and he was having to experience all this, and it was totally, I look back at it now and I think, how dare I? How dare I? But the disease takes over. It takes over, and everything is put to the side. The only thing that matters is, how am I going to fix this morning? How am I going to get loaded this morning? So what ended up happening was, my son got to be traumatized by a lot of stuff. He got traumatized by banging on the bathroom door many, many times, begging me to come out, and said, I know what you're doing in there. Because that was practically where I lived, in the bathroom, shooting dope, And my family was pretty much disgusted with me. My mom, they knew what was going on over there. And the man that I was with too, he was a woman beater. He would beat me really bad. And, I'd lie about the bruises. I'd lie about this, but, he was a connection too. That's where I was getting my drugs for free. And since I was hooked, I needed him. So what eventually happened was, we were both pretty much getting to the point where we really wanted to be done. And we knew the police, there's going to be any amount of time that we were going to get raided. And so we decided to move to Vegas. I had a girlfriend and her husband that were strung out here, and they moved to Vegas, and they got their shit together, and they got jobs, and they were doing really good. And they had offered us to come there. And so we went there, and, we kicked off heroin, and it was very hard. It was very hard. We just basically stayed in a bedroom and threw up, and we're in screaming pain, and our bodies ached, and we fought through it. And it was the worst thing I ever had experienced in my life, is going through a heroin withdrawal. And so my son had to also experience that, because he was with me. And I'll never forget, right before we left to go to Vegas, there was, we decided we were going to cop and do one last shot, before we quit. And I apparently did too much. And and the sad thing about it is, they talk about the children caught in the crossfire. My son's in the back seat, and I'm trying to, fix and shoot dope in my arm. And I'm always telling my son, turn your head, turn your head while I do this. And it's so sad because, what happened was I did too much, and everybody was pulling me out of the car, and they were trying to walk me and trying to wake me up, and my son had experienced that. He had experienced not knowing what was going on with his mom, and at the time, you don't look at it like that. At the time, when you're strung out and you're sick and all that, just like I said, nothing else matters. Nothing.
I just want to chime in. Can you hear me, Susie?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? I want to chime in just for a second. I just want to say this because I see how you're feeling when you're doing this right now. I just want to say that she has her son in her life now. Beautiful granddaughter that her son just given her recently, I don't know, 5 years ago. Annabelle, 5 years old, is she?
She'll be six this month.
She'll be six. So, she's came back. It's just painful to hear this. And it's real, guys. I told you, this is Susie. She's been there, done it. She's get better. And she has a wonderful life with her son and her granddaughter. Go ahead, Susie.
Okay. So what ended up happening was, I was able to come out of it and get back in the car, and we headed towards Vegas. And and then we got there, and that's when, I said we basically just locked ourselves in a bedroom and kicked for a whole week. And I eventually got a little job, and he got hooked back up with the electricians union, and, we're doing okay, and we're trying to look for our own place. And, I got my son registered in school. We're still drinking. We're not totally clean. We're still drinking, right? And so eventually we got our own place, and we're doing really, really good. And I learned to be a 21 dealer. So I was a 21 dealer in Las Vegas for quite a while. And basically what ended up happening is, while I was at work, my boyfriend that I was with, that when we came to Vegas, right? He hadn't shot any dope it'd been over a year, right? And we got into a big argument. And I had told him I wanted him out of the house. And the sad part was he was in bed with another woman when I called home for him to come pick me up from work. But my son answered the phone, and my son said, let me talk to him. And he said, Mom, I can't. And I go, what do you mean you can't? You know, and so here, once again, my son is traumatized, right? You know, my son says, because he's in bed with a girl. And I said, he goes, please don't tell him, please don't. So my son was terrified, you know, because George was abusive. I've never seen him lay his hands on my son, but I knew how he talked to my son, which was not okay. It was not okay. But once again, right, I'm in this domestic violence relationship. I am so sunk into the sickness of all this. And so I told my son, don't worry about it. You know, don't worry. I won't. No worry. I said, I'll call back later. So I didn't want to put my son in the middle. So I called back later and he answered the phone. And I basically just told him, I said, you need to pack your stuff and you need to leave. And I said, I know you were in bed with another woman. And so he said, you don't know what I'm talking about, blah, blah, blah. And it was one of your friends and she needed a place to stay for, you know, overnight. And I told her, well, Susie won't care. Just go ahead and sleep on the couch, you know. And then I went ahead and got up and told her, go ahead and get into bed if you want. I'm up and, you know, whatever, right? It's like, okay, yeah. But the thing is that I told him I wanted him to leave and, you know, and I didn't need a ride home. He didn't need to come get me. And so he still came and picked me up and was trying to tell me, you know, about everything that was going on, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, and I just wasn't buying it. I wasn't buying it. So, you know, I got home.
Good for you, Susie. You shouldn't be buying it.
So anyways, what happened
Let me say one more thing. Let me say one more thing. So you heard Susie when she stopped using heroin and that, but they still drank, right? So drinking counts, guys. You're not clean and sober if you stop heroin and crack and you drink. So just know that. Go ahead, Susie.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So then, you know, so what ended up happening was, is that when I got home, my son was with the neighbors. They went fishing. Him and his grandma, his friend's grandma took him fishing for the day. So I was really happy he was not there during this argument. So anyways, I ended up leaving. I said, when I come back, you better be gone. And so I left. And then when I called back, I called and there was a man answered the phone. And I said, I don't know who you are, but you need to let me talk to George. His name was George. And he goes, well, I'm sorry, ma'am. He's not here. He's at the hospital, but we need you to come home right now. We want to talk to you. And I'm going, well, I said, I'm going to the hospital. So I assumed that George got drunk because he was an alcoholic, even though he quit heroin. And once in a while, you know, we were smoking crack too, you know, so all that disease did not stop. All the insanity was still there. You know, we got off the heroin, but then we picked up something else. That's what addicts do, right? You know,
Yep.
You know, we'll just keep doing whatever we can do. So I ended up going to the hospital and I walked in and told them that I needed to see him. And they said to me, I'm sorry, ma'am, he's dead.
Oh,
You have
geez.
to wait over there.
Mm.
And that's exactly how they told me. And I was just devastated.
Mm.
And then the detectives came and they wanted to talk to me. And they literally asked me if I killed him because I told them I found him in bed with another woman. And they asked me if I killed him.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, no, I didn't kill him. Because what had happened when somebody was there and called 911 and said, there's a man that's overdosed here and left him and to die. And they found him and he had shot some dope. I know for a fact he didn't do it to commit suicide because he had a pocket full of money and he only spent $20 of that money. And I knew exactly how much money he had when he got paid. And so
That's my Susie. Don't have much money.
You know, I knew that, but what it was he has not shot any heroin in over a year and he'd been up all night drinking and that combination will kill you. And that's what happened. It killed him. My son was taken away from me during that time for about 3 days and he was put in a child's home until more investigation was done. And my sister said, do you want me to come get him? And I said, no, I'm going to go to court. I'm going to fight this. And of course, when they ransacked the house, you know, it didn't look good because there's, you know, needles around and, you know, and he's dead in the bathroom and all that. So I ended up getting everything all cleaned up and, you know, and I was working at that time too. So I ended up getting him back. And the hardest thing was for me to tell his dad that, that his son had passed away, but he knew that his son had a serious drug problem all his life. But what ended up happening was there Susie is, right? So I'm alone with my feelings. Okay. I'm alone. I'm scared. I'm grieving, and I'm not okay. So what ends up happening is that, I'm starting to get loaded, not on heroin, but I'm starting to drink a lot after work. I'm starting to smoke a lot of crack. I'm starting to do a lot of coke, snorting a lot of cocaine, and eventually what happened is I got fired pretty much from every job, every 21 job I had, because I was always asking for a front from my check 2 days after I got paid. And when you deal 21, you get tips too. So they knew something was up. So I was calling in a lot. So what eventually happened was I had, lost my job. I had ended up meeting another guy, and we were together for a while. And then he personally, didn't want me. So I ended up being on the streets. Well, what happened with him was I turned him on to crack, and we both turned out to be a hot mess. And what happened was he went his own way. I went my own way. I called my sister and said, please, can you take Scotty? I'll put him on a plane. I can't take care of him. And that was a hard thing for me to do, but I didn't want to drag him around from motel to motel and have him. He'd already seen enough. He had already seen way more than any child should ever have to experience in their life.
Susie, can I ask you something? So how did he experience that with you whenever you told him that you were sending him home? How did he experience that?
I'm sorry, what was that?
How did he experience it when you told him, Scotty, that you were going to send him home to be with your family? Can you hear me?
He really didn't. He really didn't say too much of anything. I think he probably was glad, to be honest. I think that, because he knew how his grandma was and he knew how his aunt was, and they were going to be the ones taking care of him. And that he knew when he was visiting them that he was always safe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, he was okay with it. He basically didn't say, no, I don't want to go or anything like that, and I can understand why.
Mm-hmm.
I can understand why, I'm his mother, but I wasn't present.
Mm-hmm.
I was never present.
Mm-hmm.
And so he missed out on so much in his life, so much, growing up. So I sent him home, and then it was just me.
What year was that? What year was that you around that time? Because I met you in '89, I think.
Probably 89, 90.
Right about when you met me.
Mm-hmm.
A year within the year, right? Because I remember when we got together at one time. You got arrested for prowling. Remember you were prowling? You went to get something to eat one night, right? And so the cops knew her really well, right? And so she didn't come back. I mean, all night, not back. And then I found out that she was in jail, and she told me they arrested her for prowling. I never knew what prowling was.
Mm. Yeah. So what ended up happening is that I lost the apartment, of course, right? I'm basically homeless on the streets. And I remember, women, going out and turning dates and stuff for money. And, and I had met some of these women, and they were just, basically, and, back in my mind, there was that thought that, I always told myself I'd never go to that level. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, but see what happened was, the drugs took over, and I had no job. I had nobody. And I didn't want to feel. I didn't want to feel the pain of being homeless, sending my child home, losing everything I had, my morals, my values, all that. I wanted to be totally done. And all I wanted to do was to get loaded, to not feel the pain anymore. And so I remember going and going, okay, well, here goes. So I remember, once I did it, that was it. I was out there every day, trying to make money by selling my body. And so I was prostituting quite a bit. And I continue to get arrested and back on the street and get arrested. And then, like Greg said, it was probably about 5 a.m. The sun was coming up, and I was walking down the street. And I remember seeing Greg. I didn't know him. He was on one side of the street. I was on the other. And, he was dressed really nice. And my first thought was, he's a cop.
Part of my hustle, Susie. I sold it pretty well.
He finally waved me over, right? And I was like, should I talk to him or not? So I went over there because I was out there trying to find some money, right? So I can buy some crack. And I said, yeah. And he goes, hey, what's up? And I said, nothing. What's up with you? And he goes, I'm trying to get something. I said, oh, really? What are you trying to get? And he goes, well, I want to, to get any crack. And I said, are you a cop? And he goes, no, man, I'm not a cop. And I said, gosh, man. I said, well, why are you're all dressed up and stuff? He goes, well, that's my hustle. And I said, all right. So I thought, man, should I take a chance to go get this guy some crack or not? So I said, all right. So, I said, all right, you got to give me the money. You can't go with me. You got to give me the money and I'll bring you back the crack. And he goes, I don't know. Well, you're going to bring it back, right? And I said, I promise I'll bring it back. And I wasn't the kind of girl that wanted to rip people off or do any of that, so I got it and I copped and, he said, you want to come smoke it with me? And I said, sure. So I'm waiting. Any minute I'm going to get arrested, right? Any minute I'm going to get arrested. This is, So anyway, so we went back to the room and we started talking and he didn't want anything from me. He didn't want to, have sex with me or anything. And, and and he was really, really nice. I have to say he was really, really nice. And we smoked crack and we talked and he talked about his life and I kind of talked about my life.
I was a real, what did you say? I wasn't, nice, you said. What did you say that I wasn't? I
said you were really nice. You were a gentleman.
Really nice. I was a really nice crack addict. I became a nicer heroin addict about 2 years later.
Yeah. So eventually we became friends, and the whole thing was we hit it off as really good friends. I respected him for respecting me. And, and so, he told me, he goes, hey, you can always find me in poker rooms and stuff like that. And, and I said, well, you can find me probably out here. I was a respectful crack addict too. So what ended up happening was, he would always find me and go, hey, let's go get some crack. So, and I would, and, we'd go get loaded and get a room and nothing would happen. And we had friends out there. We'd say, hey, you guys want to, come over, we're going to get loaded and blah, blah, blah. And we drink, we gamble. And Greg taught me how to be a really good Texas Hold'em player. Yes, he did.
That's right.
So I'd go in the poker rooms and I'd always sit behind him and he'd play and, and I learned how to play and he would teach me over and over, and then there was times that, he wouldn't see me for 2 or 3 weeks and then I would try to find him and I'd tell him, I said, Greg, I am so tired. I haven't been to sleep. I've got no money. I just want to go to sleep. And he said, just come here. He goes, I got a room so-and-so. I'll give you the keys. You can go up there and sleep for a few days. And he was always going to, he always was there for me, to feed me, take care of me. Right. And then,
I remember that really well. I remember that.
Yeah. And so, I always knew I could count on him, as a friend to go ahead and help me out, and then it got to the point where, I don't know, got to the point where we started feeling like we were for each other. Yeah. And so we did, and we did. And, it it felt good. It was right. He was a good hustler. He taught me how to be a good hustler, but I already knew how to hustle, but he wasn't liking that too much after a while. After we got together, he was not really liking it, and, but, I needed to get money to smoke crack, and he had his hustle, and, so, but what ended up happening was that, I ended up getting pregnant and we had a child together. And I think we shared some of that at the last story, but the gift was that, I knew what I had put my son through, and there was no way that I was going to put this little girl through. And so I had decided that to give her up for adoption. And my mother came down, and she came down one point and kind of got me out of jail and told me she's going to take me home. And she said, but first I really need to think about what I'm going to do about the baby. And, and that was really, really hard. And when I had the baby, Greg wanted nothing to do with me. He was just tired of me, going to jail for prostitution. And so it got to the point where, he wanted nothing to do with me or the baby. And, but neither one of us was in any shape to take care of a child anyways. And Greg eventually got strung out on heroin during this time. And I remember the night that he was going to, do some heroin because somebody had it. And they knew Greg had a pocket full of money, and they said, man, you should try this. And, and I said, Greg, whatever you do not do it. I said, man, do not become a heroin addict. I said,
you were right. You were right.
And I said, I've been there and done that. Please, you don't have any clue of what you're going to experience from this moment on. And it's going to be a monkey on your back that you're never going to get rid of. Please don't start that.
Let me just interject this real quick for people that don't know my part of the story. So that was back probably at the very end of 1990. I think, it was right before daughter was born in 1990. Yeah. And so she said that, right? And she was right, because I did get strung out on heroin. And for 6 years, I've said before, I was in county jail for 30 days once and in county jail for 15 days once. Total of 45 days, minus 6 years, minus 45 days. I shot heroin every day, several times a day. Ended up in the hospital weighing 124 pounds. Go ahead, Susie.
Yeah. So what ended up happening was, I'd take off, I'd go do my thing, and he knew that once I landed in jail, I'd try to call him to come put money on my books. And, he basically just said, I'm done. I'm not continuing going to do this. So I ended up, as I said, I gave my little girl up for adoption, or our little girl up for adoption. And my mom said, I think you need to come home. And Greg was off with somebody else, and I didn't know where he was, and we were done. And so I let my mom took me back to Vallejo and flew me back. And, and she was praying to God that, I would do good getting out of there. But what ended up happening was that I did not do good. It was only a matter of time where I was on the streets of Vallejo prostituting and smoking crack, and ended up in jail numerous of times. And I finally decided that, I was going to go to Reno. And because I had a girlfriend that moved up there to get out of Vallejo, and she said I could come there. And so I went up there, and I had no experience. I didn't really have any experience, jobs or anything, pretty much. Sure, I could probably try to get a 21 license. But the thing is, when my mom got me out of jail the last time, the judge said, if I ever see you in the state of Nevada, you're going to send me to prison. And then I go to Reno and thinking, oh, wow, I'm in Nevada, So it's like, oh, geez, I've got to hide out. So anyways, I decided that I was going to go work on a ranch. And the ranch had no animals, but a lot of studs. So just a little cute joke. But anyways, I went to work at the Mustang Ranch, and I was able to go there and make money and get loaded. And I was pretty much locked in there. They don't let you out and go and come as you please. Once you get there, you've got to work but they do, you have a chef on duty, you have a beauty shop on site, you have all this stuff on site where you don't have to leave. So I ended up working there, but I ended up drinking very heavily while I was there, basically because of what I had to do and all that. And I just stayed medicated. I stayed medicated to be able to have to do what I had to do while I was there. And I had the dope dealer, get crack into me, into there, which was not hard. And so, it ended up getting really, really bad. And what ended up happening is that I got really sick, and I had to go into the hospital. I was up in Winnemucca at the time. I had left the Mustang and went to Winnemucca with a girlfriend, and she had a home up there, and I got real deathly ill. And I just thought it was from coming down all the alcohol and all the drugs, because she wasn't into all that. She didn't know how heavy I was into it. But I thought, this is a good time to just stop all this, man. So I got really, really sick, and I thought it was that, but it wasn't. She rushed me to the emergency room, and in Winnemucca is a little hospital, but they immediately put me on a plane and flew me back to Reno to St. Mary's and said my liver was failing. And I got checked in, and the doctor said, "This is the deal." He said, "We're going to keep you in here. We're going to monitor your liver. We're going to flush your liver. We're going to do everything possible to stabilize your liver." He goes, "But if you walk out this door and you get loaded or put another drink of alcohol in your system, you're going to die."
It's hard to hear that. Hard to hear that,
huh? And my thought was, wow. And I remember having a spiritual awakening, and you hear about a spiritual awakening in a lot of programs and a lot of recovery people talk about that. And I truly had a spiritual awakening. I was there for a week, and they stabilized my liver. My friend called my sister and told her, and I talked to my sister, and my sister said, "Susie, when is enough enough? You have done everything. You have done it all. You've destroyed. Now all your organs are starting to fail. When are you going to be done?" It really hit me hard. And I said, "I don't know, Becky." I said, "I don't know." I really couldn't say, "Oh, this is it," because, I've made all those promises. We make those promises when we're getting loaded, and I promise I won't get loaded again. I told my son many times, I promise this is it. You don't have to worry. I'm not going to get loaded anymore. And, mommy's going to do the right thing. And so I was at the point where I was tired of making promises that I couldn't keep. And I didn't want to do that to my family anymore. And I just told her, I don't know. Because I didn't know. I didn't know if I was going to get out of the hospital. I was going to go use. I didn't know, but I still didn't feel good, because once you're clean in the head and you haven't used for a few days, all this stuff comes up about what you've done with your kids, how you've treated your family, where your life is, and all of that stuff comes, and you just don't want to think about all the people that you hurt, that because, we hurt the ones that we love the most. That's just automatic. We do that in this disease, and it's not that we want to. The disease is more powerful than us. It truly is. And
we think we're safe. We think we're safer when we hurt the people that we're close to. That they'll take us back.
Yeah. And my mother, she'd tell me.
But I guess you were at a point then where you knew that you had to do something when you went back to Vallejo this time. I'm guessing, right? What did you do when you went back to Vallejo?
Then what happened was basically, I made a phone call to a woman that basically had seen me off and on in the Vallejo jail many times after my mom brought me back. And she'd always say, "Susie, I can get you in a treatment program." And I'd tell her, "No, I'm good. I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to get me a job. I'm going to be fine." Right. And that was my intention. I really believed that I was done, but when I hit those streets, that sun is shining. It's gone. So what ended up happening was, when I was in Reno, I remembered that woman that's so dear to my heart, and I thought, you know what, I need to call her and tell her I'm ready now. I hadn't talked to her in about a year and a half. And I called her and she said, Susie, just stay by that phone. Do not go anywhere. I'll make a phone call, call you right back. And she called me right back and she said, I have a bed for you in San Francisco. And if you want it, it's yours. And I said, I do. I want it. So I ended up getting a ride down there and I checked into that program.
Can I stop you just for, let me stop you just for a minute. So she's on her way now to Vallejo. She reached out to this woman that she knew from the jails, get her into treatment back in, was it 93 or 93, 94?
It was 93.
93. And I told her the other day, we were talking about coming and doing this, and she saw my show that I do on my brother's website. And I told her the other day when we were talking about it, I said, Susie, I'm saying it again to you. I am so proud of you. You are a wonderful woman, and I love you.
Mm-hmm. I love you too, Greg.
Continue.
All righty. So I ended up finishing that program. My sister would bring my son down to visit me at the program, and it was in San Francisco. It was ran by the Salvation Army, and it's called Pinehurst. It's a beautiful program down in the Sunset District of San Francisco. And so I ended up staying. I ended up dealing with the grief that I had of giving my child up. And the thing that really I don't understand, but I do understand, is that why wasn't having her enough to make me quit then? Why did it come to my health? Well, the reason that is because, see, it doesn't matter what we go through. It doesn't matter. We never know what's gonna happen in our lives to get us clean, right?
Yeah.
But what came down to it was that was my time. And when I talk about that spiritual awakening, what I'm talking about is that I laid in that hospital bed and I looked up and I told God, I said, God, I can't do this alone. I am so scared and I need your help so bad. I want to do the right thing. And I don't want to ever use again. And he basically said, I've got this. And I felt it. I felt this huge relief off my shoulders. I just felt this warmness come down in my body. And at that moment, I knew I was going to be okay. And so, life is good today. I can tell you, I graduated that program. They hired me on to run that program after I was there. And then the wonderful thing that happened was the woman that helped me get in treatment, she heard how good I was doing. And she called me and she said, Susie, I have a job for you. And I said, really? She goes, and it is going into the jails and working with women.
Oh, boy.
And I was like, oh my God. She goes, because I said, she goes, you remember that time I came to jail and I talked to you and you were crying? You were crying really hard. And I knew something had happened to you when you were on the outside. And what had happened was she came in to see me one time and I was in tears and she knew something was wrong. And she'd asked me, she goes, so what else is going on? And I said, I was raped. I said, I was raped on the street and I'm pregnant. And this is not being pregnant with my daughter. This is, before I even, this was after I came back from Vegas. And I said, and I don't want to have this baby. And I said, and the way it's looking with my crime, I'm going to be in here for a while and I do not want to have this baby. And she fought the judge to get me released to her care, get me to Planned Parenthood, to get me an abortion, put me up in a clean and sober house for the night, and then take me back to check me back into jail. And before she took me back into jail, she said, Susie, I'm going to take you out to eat before I have to take you back wherever you want to go. And I said, she goes, what kind of food you want? I said, Mexican.
Lobster. You love lobster. Did you have lobster? Did you have lobster?
No, Mexican. I didn't want to, tell her lobster. So
I know that's your favorite. I know that's your favorite, though, from being with you. I remember taking the lobster, even when we were using. And addicts, I took you to Red Lobster a couple times.
Right.
Go ahead.
So anyway, so she had said, Susie, if you ever decide to get clean, she said, what is it you would like to do? And I said, I'd like to work with women that are involved in prostitution and help them. She said, never let go of that dream. Never. And she goes, because you know what, that dream could come true. And I said, okay, Pat, I won't. And she then had to take me back to jail, and I went back to jail, and and then after that was kind of going backwards. But then after that was when I went to Reno and all that stuff happened. And then she found me in treatment and said she had a job for me. So she hired me, and I was able to do the work that she did for me. I was able to go in there and work with women. But then also during that time was I had fought really hard to get a nonprofits license and open up a home for women involved in human trafficking. And that dream came true. I did that.
Yes,
and I had for 3 years. And, and I was still working with Pat. That didn't stop. I didn't want to give that up. So me and Pat ended up working together for 20 years. And we ended up kind of resigning from our job at the sheriff's department. And pretty much Pat was getting older, and she's in her 70s now, and she wanted to go ahead and retire. And it was really hard for her, but it was hard for me to stay on for somebody that got me in treatment. We worked together side by side. We did the same work together. She believed in me. She told me about a dream. I met that dream that I could not work at that agency anymore without her. It was just like, it was going to be a huge abandonment issue for me. And so I moved on, and she moved on. As a matter of fact, I just talk to her today. I talk to her every day. I can't let her go.
It's wonderful. So Pat was the one that you were telling me about when I ran into you in 2001. She was the one that you were working with. I didn't know that she was the one that saw you when you were in jail. That's pretty wonderful.
Yeah, that was her. Yeah. And so what ended up eventually happening was, I had that nonprofit for 3 years, and then the owner sold the house. And so I had to find the women other places to go, which I did.
Was that Rosewood then? Was that Rosewood?
No.
You're not talking about Rosewood later.
No, I was working at Rosewood House at the same time. And it was through an agency called Youth and Family Services, where I was the program director for a transitional house that we worked with women in the jail and having them able to come to Rosewood and stay. That was the
program that CC Sabathia, the pitcher, he was a Cleveland Indians pitcher. Now he's pitcher for the New York Yankees, and now he might be retired. But he made this large donation to Rosewood House, maybe $500,000 or something. Yeah. I'm not sure how much it was.
No, what he did was he basically came in. He came in, and him and his wife, and he had 51 team members. His number's 51, I believe.
Yes, 51.
Yeah, and he had 51 team members, not his team, but workers that came in and restructured the whole facility. And I got a signed T-shirt. I got a signed ball. They hung out. His wife gave me a beautiful bracelet that I have today. Yeah, so they did so much for Rosewood House. And then during that time, even though I was still at Rosewood, I opened up my own nonprofit. So I was doing both at that time.
Was that Susie's project? Was that Susie's project? So she has her own project now, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Pretty wonderful.
So it was called Susie's Project, but I had to let it go because the owner sold the house. But so then eventually but during all this time of being clean, I'm going to NA meetings, I'm working with a sponsor, I'm doing my steps, which I still do today, almost 27 years later, because something has worked, right? Somebody told me once, well, why do you still got to go to those meetings? And why do you still do the steps when you got all this time? I said, because I'm not about to stop to find out, right? Because it's working in my life today.
That's right.
It's working in my life today. And, and so I sponsor other women. I truly believe in the 12 steps. I believe in NA. I believe in going to meetings. They're going to save your ass. Trust me, they will. Because trust me, there's days having 27 years clean. I'm just a hit of crack or a drink away from getting loaded. It doesn't matter because that disease will show up at my lowest moment.
So Susie, it's like weird, Susie saying that about, the one drink or the one thing about what I told you about. Somebody asked me about why aren't you recovered yet? Why do you say you're in recovery and not recovered? I think I shared that with you, right? And I told her, I said, because one is too many and 1,000 is never enough, right?
Yeah. And the thing is, I'm an addict and I'll always be an addict. Okay. And I'm in recovery. I'm not recovered because that disease can show up anytime. It's like cancer. It's like if you continue to go and get your radiation treatments and you continue to do what's going to work, right? The cancer, it will slowly go away. It's the same thing as a disease. Well, let me kind of step away from the camera and show you my big picture on my back wall.
Okay, come on. Oh, I see it back there.
Yeah. And what that is a picture of all my NA books that I work out of, that a friend of mine who's an artist that painted all my books for me, that I've worked hard on in those books, those NA books, because that's what I was talking about, about the NA program. I do NA. I started out in Alcoholics Anonymous because that's what they introduced us to in the program. But then I found that my niche was NA. I met a lot of people in NA. I could relate to NA because mostly I was a drug addict more than an alcoholic. And you just got to find out where you fit at, and I found that I fit in NA. And so basically, my life is good today. I can tell you that we all, life shows up at times and things are rough. And I just recently, when I left the sheriff's department, I went on to get another job through another program that was working with domestic violence women. And I thought that was a perfect job. It was more money, better benefits. And they hired me under false pretenses. I got hired and they couldn't pay me for 6 months. So I had struggled, and I was so upset. And recently, yesterday, they finally paid everything they owed me, because I had to just let go and let God, right? And it was all about, what? God will get me through this. I didn't have any money for 6 months, but luckily, because I work in a program, I've learned that, you got to save up for a rainy day, right? Put money in the bank and, but I had to learn all this stuff. I had to learn about budgeting and I had to learn about, everything, pretty much because, like I told you, I started drinking at a very young age and I didn't learn a lot of skills, and I remember getting my first car and getting my insurance and getting a phone and getting a job. And the thing that was really hard for me when I first got clean and got a job was having money on me, because all I knew when I had money on me back in the day is I wanted to go get loaded with that money.
That's right.
So I would hurry up and spend it really fast because on clothes or this and that, because I didn't want it in my pocket. I was scared. It was a big trigger for me to have any load of cash on me.
Let me say something really quick. So, I've shared before in relapse prevention that large amounts of cash or cash in a paycheck in early recovery. She's talking about it right now. We've got about probably 15 minutes left, I would say, Susie. So I don't know. We talked before we did this and we mentioned somebody that we weren't going to talk about, but you mentioned the baby. So
yeah,
no names.
I mentioned that we had a child together. I didn't really.
This is God right here. This is God thing right here.
I mentioned that, and what I can say was, our daughter, when she turned 18, she found me on Facebook and, it's been a gift. And it was a struggle at first. She really, really didn't want anything to do with me. She just wanted to know about medical
Yeah, so let me just say this. We'll just interject really quick, Susie. That when she found Susie, I mean, I'd met Susie 9 years earlier. So Susie calls me one day on the phone. Greg, I need you to call me. Right? I thought she relapsed. I didn't really know what was going on. She calls me and she says, "You'll never know what just happened." And so she says, "I gave her your number, but don't call her until you get over here with me." Right? So now all of a sudden, the daughter that she had put up for adoption was adopted by a really nice couple, single couple that had a business. We're not going to go for her anonymity. We're not going to mention our daughter's name or anything. But I told Susie, I looked at Susie, and when she got off the phone, when I came there, she said that she's got a hold of me because for medical reasons. And she started to cry. I remember it really, really vividly. And I said, "Susie, God did not bring her into your life right now to take her out of your life." And I told Susie, I says, "What are the odds of a heroin addict, crack addict, both of us, in 1991 in Las Vegas, to 19 years later be standing in the same living room, clean and sober. Susie for 17 years, me for 13 years at the time. It was just amazing. I'm going to let you go ahead and share a little more about that.
Sure. So, basically she wanted to know medical history. If I, anything that ran in the family or anything like that, and I told her no. And she said, okay. And then she'd asked me, basically, she said, do you want to know what I've been doing for 18 years, how my life was? And I said, I'd love to know. I would love for you to tell me, and I basically, I'm trying to hold back tears and because I don't want to be sobbing on the phone while she's trying to talk to me. And, and then I told her about me and what I'm doing. And she goes, oh, wow, that's awesome. She goes, I was really scared to even make this call because I had asked my mom that, what is she still using? And she goes, my mom told me that that's a decision I'd have to find out and make. And so she was glad to hear that I got my life together and I was a drug counselor and, she's glad I was doing what I'm doing because during that time I got clean. Of course, I went to college, and became a drug counselor. And, just like Greg was sharing about how we met, the thing is when I left Vegas, I did not know where Greg was to tell him I was leaving. Greg did not know where I lived. My family lived, right? And I didn't know where his family lived. We talked about, our family's from the Bay Area, but that's all we knew, right? I didn't know his family lived in Hayward. He didn't know my family lived in Vallejo. And when it came to do that conference that day, I was in college. I was going to college and studying, to become a substance abuse counselor. And then when I did see him, he can get the stories a little messy.
Me?
Yeah, I'm gonna correct Greg a little bit here.
I told you that she's going to correct me.
I'm going to correct Greg. Okay, so what ended up happening is I had gotten there earlier that day and the other staff members weren't there. Now, I was only going on that Thursday because that's the only day they had asked me to speak. I was going to talk about the gel programs we were going to talk about at this KDAC conference. And so what happened was I was only going to be there that Thursday in Emeryville, right? This is 8 years. I've been clean already, and I had left 2 years prior to that to come back to Vallejo. So it'd been 10 years. So what ended up happening is I walked in and I realized, gosh, none of my people are here for my job. So I'm going to go back in my car and study. And then this person said, hey, Susie. I think he said Sue because I went by Sue back in the day, but anyway, so then I turned around and I looked and I was like, my heart dropped. I didn't know what to say. And my first thought was he was in the bar drinking. I didn't think he was at this conference, right? And I thought, oh my God, what is he doing here? How can he be here? And then, so finally he said, I go, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? And I literally thought that he was in the bar drinking because he was a drinker, and I thought he was in the bar drinking. What he was doing in Emeryville at that time, I had no clue. So I said, what are you doing here? And he goes, oh my God. He goes, you're not going to believe it. I was sitting next to my coworker and I'm reading this and blah, blah, blah. And I said, I think I know this person and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, oh my God. I said, are you here at this conference? And he goes, yeah. And I went, oh my God. I said, I can't do this. I said, we have to leave. We have to go somewhere and sit down. I can't do this right now. And so I basically, I said, let's go have coffee, and we sat down and I said, how are you here? And he said, well, Susie, what I did was, he said, he goes, I had heard you left, but I had no idea where you went. He goes, I was strung out on heroin, and it got really bad and one of my lungs collapsed and I had to be hospitalized. And he said, my mom begged me to come home, my mom and dad, and said, just come home and get well. If you want to go back to that lifestyle after you're well, go ahead. And he asked me, what about you? And I said, I continue using. I ended up in the hospital. They wanted to remove my liver. And I had the choice whether I wanted to get clean. And so I went to school to become a drug counselor, and Greg said, so do I. So did I. You know, it's like, what a story, right? We had no clue we were both going to be there 10 years later on the same day at a drug counselors conference.
The only day that we were going to be there. The only day.
We became drug counselors.
That's right.
You know, and it was like, that's like hitting a lottery, right? What were the chances that we would meet on that certain Thursday and our lives would come together? But it's all God. Mm-hmm. You know, God had a big part in this, you know, and a big part in this because he had plans. And, you know, he had plans for both of us when we were sick, and he took care of us. And you know what? God knew I had a dream. He made it happen. Greg was done, you know, he was tired, and he wanted to help the suffering addict, and I wanted to help the suffering addict because of what we went through. We suffered so much and went through so much pain and caused our family so much pain that we wanted to beat this disease, and we decided to do the right thing. And we did, you know, and today, you know, he's my dear friend, you know, and, you know, we love to play poker together. Still, you know, we love to go to casinos and play, and you know, he's taught me a lot. You know, gets on my nerves at a poker game, you know, because he always wants to say, "You don't know how we met," you know. But I do that. Cut it. Nobody.
Oh yeah, that's right. I tell stories sometimes about her. It's like way like too much information.
Yeah.
She puts me in check, though.
It's like it's a story that really needs to be told, you know, and you know, and just remember, you know, you guys, if you're out there and you're watching this, or you're a family member that has somebody that's struggling with the disease of addiction, you know, it's you can't make them get help. They got to want to get help. And it's hard. It's so hard. But you know what? The best thing my mother did for me, because when I was in Vegas, she was wiring money left and right, and I'd call her crying and tell her I need a hotel. And you know, and of course, I just took that money and got loaded, you know. But the best thing my mother did was when she finally cut me off totally, did not send me money, told me, do not ever come by here, do not ever step foot on this block. Totally did the tough love, which what was left was just me. Just me. I was left with me, and I didn't like me. And, you know, and so, you know, it's a disease. It's a powerful disease. You can recover.
Yes, you can
recover. You totally can. You know, life is so good today. I have done so many things in life today I thought I'd never be able to do.
Can I say something right now?
Sure.
With no names. 2 years ago on my birthday, I was able to fly someplace and have dinner with my daughter, Susie's and my daughter. And last month, for the first time, our daughter flew to Susie's for Susie's birthday and met Susie's family for the very first time last month. Unbelievable. How did that feel?
Yeah, that was great. You know, she got to meet her brother and my son and my sister, and just immediate family members were there, and it was great. She's so warming and loving and caring and beautiful, and she basically, you know, she fell in love with my granddaughter Annabelle, and she brought gifts for her, and she brought me a beautiful present. And, you know, our relationship has grown, you know, because I remember when I gave her up for adoption, I struggled with if she was adopted to a safe family. And I prayed every day that she was safe and she was going to be okay. Yeah. You know, and then after that, after she found me, I thought, you know what, I need to pray for a relationship with her. So then I started praying for a relationship. And I remember early on,
Susie, that when she called and got into her, found you, and we met her about a month or two later, I told Susie we got to go see her, and so she asked her adoptive parents. We went and saw her for a minute, started a relationship, and then she disappeared for 2 or 3 or 4 years. I'm not exactly sure how long it was after that, but Susie, I asked Susie, I said, How does that feel? She says, you know what, Greg? She says, I asked God to make her be safe. And God answered that prayer for me. So I feel like it might be, I've got to be all right with that. And then she's been in touch with the last 2 or 3 years now. Something like that?
Yeah. She's been, a little bit longer than that. She was sparingly off and on with the text once in a while, but she basically, when she found me, she was only 18. So she was very young. And until when she got a little bit older, she wanted to know more about me and get a relationship with me. And and she was open to that. So, we just took it really slow, and I didn't want to put any pressure on her or anything. And so, I was blessed when I asked her, because I'd asked her for quite a while to fly out, but her schedule was real hectic. And she said, you know what? She goes, this might be a good time for me because I'm off work, and come out. So I flew her out. She was here 4 days, and each day was busy. And, we had a blast, and we went shopping, and we went to the lake, and I took her on a wine tour. Of course, I was a designated driver because I don't drink, but she had never, been on a wine tour before. And so she got to do that, and she loved it. And we had a blast. And the night before she left, she cooked me and my son and Annabelle dinner for us. She made an amazing dinner. She's an awesome cook. And so it was the best birthday present I ever had. Best ever.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
And I got to experience that, and my family just loved her. And so she felt really good about it and thought it all went well, and her and my son hit it off. So she has a wonderful brother, and he's got a wonderful sister.
It's so wonderful. I'm so proud of you. I love you so much. I'm so proud of you, guys. I've been talking you up the last couple of weeks, and I told you guys last week. I said Susie's going to be here. Don't miss it. So listen, we've been on an hour and 17 minutes, so maybe we should wrap it up. I hear Freckles in the background barking.
Yeah, that's my dog.
Freckles.
She's like, "What are you doing? Don't you know I want a good treat?"
You have to go feed Freckles. Yeah. You're going to come on again with me, right?
Yeah.
Another time?
Of course, yeah.
Maybe I'll have I'll have you interview. Maybe I'll interview you, and you can talk about the steps a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
The steps, the steps of today.
I'd be so happy to, And I just hope, that my story might have touched you in some way. Anybody that's listening, because. There is help out there, and you don't have to live like this, and I hate to say it, but I love the suffering addict because I've been there and I know what it feels like. So I have empathy, and I have compassion, and I have love, and I have kindness to give you, to tell you that there's a new way to live.
That's right.
It really is. Because I never thought that this low down prostitute, working the streets, crack addict, heroin addict, homeless person, thief, robbed, stole cars, did this, did that. I mean, I did a lot of crimes that I should still be in prison for. I can tell you that right now, but God had a plan for me. And my plan is to sit right here and talk to you tonight. So I just want to say Thank you so much. Thank you, David. Thank you, Greg. I love you, Greg.
Wonderful.
Cards, Greg.
Yes. Do you have a little button down there on your thing, Susie, where it says Leave Studio? It should be right down below your red X.
That has a what?
It has a little red dot with an X. It says Leave Studio. Do you see that?
Yeah.
So go ahead. I'm going to bring you back here in a few weeks and talk about the steps, okay?
Okay.
I love you.
Good. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Everyone have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Good. Bye-bye. Click that red X.
I did.
You're still there. There you go. Okay. So, guys, I hope that you enjoyed Susie tonight. I don't know that I shared that she was my mother's. I don't call her baby's mama because I think baby's mama has a little bit of a negative connotation to it. So she's the daughter she's the mother of my daughter now. And we both have our daughter back in our life right now. It's just a wonderful thing. That will be it for the night, guys. And I hope that Susie's story, touched your heart like it touched mine again. It touches my heart every time. Touches my heart every time I see her. Okay, guys, I will see you next week.